So this is it. This is the final computer programming task where we're going to make a tic-tac-toe game where the goal of the game is to give an opportunity for a player to play against the computer. And that process of getting the player to play against the computer is a bit of a challenging one, so I want to give you a little bits of advice right off the start. General plan, see if you can come up with a really simple looking main program that's very, very readable. We'll use lots of functions that will do all of the tough work in other parts of the program, and then the main program itself will actually be very, very short, easily fit onto one screen as you look at it. The general plan is we're going to display the playing board with those 9 different spots that are available, and then we're going to get into a loop. And this loop is just going to keep on going, letting people take turns until either somebody's won or until all 9 turns have happened and it's a tie. So inside the loop, we're going to let somebody take a turn, might be the player, might be the computer. Then right after the person or the computer has made their move, we're going to redisplay the board so we can see what it looks like. We will, inside the loop, somewhere need to keep track of how many turns have been taken. And then obviously when we get to 9, we know that we're done looping. We'll also keep track of whose turn it is. You know, should it be the player who goes next or should it be the computer who goes next? And we're going to need to check and see if there's a winner. And if there's a winner, obviously the loop needs to end. So it's going to be a conditional loop. We don't know for sure that there are going to be 9 different moves. We might have somebody win before that. And we'll just keep doing that loop over and over until somebody has won, until there is a winner, or until 9 turns have been taken. And then we can display who's won the game, whether it be the computer or the player, or if it's a tie. So what does it look like when it actually runs? Probably going to do something like this. It's going to ask them who wants to go first. I might say, yeah, sure, I'd love to go first. And then it displays the board with its 9 spots and then asks me where I would like to go. So I'm going to try and go in spot number 1. And it went in spot 5. So the computer's picking as well. And now I'm going to have a chance to pick again. If I try to be sneaky and go on top of the computer, I'm going to try to go in spot 5. Then it's just going to go, no, try again, right? Can't go there. So, okay, I'll try maybe spot 9. And I went 9, and oh, the computer went in 8. So maybe I'll go into 2. And the computer's gone into box 3. Now I'm going to deliberately lose the game here. I'm going to go for box 4. And if the computer's smart, it's going to take box 7 and then win the game. So it does it's got a little snarky message there, right, saying that it's smarter than I am. And that's fine. You can have it do that if you like. So how are we going to actually get that to work inside our code? We want to have it, of course, ask at the beginning who's going to go first. Then it's going to go play after play after play, either having the computer pick or the person. And at the right time, it needs to end the game and say, nope, I've won. And, if you want, you can go ahead and play again. So to do that, here are some variables and some functions that will help you out. Some variables. I would suggest you have an integer variable called whose turn is it, which is going to keep track of whether the player should go next or the computer. And it can just either be a value of 1 or 2. Turns taken is going to keep track of how many times we've had somebody take a turn. And that way, if it ever gets to 9, we know that we can end the game and it's a tie. Who wins is going to keep track of currently who's won the game. It'll be 0 most of the time, but if the player wins, it'll get switched over to a 1. Or if the computer wins, it'll get switched over to a 2. And then game board. Game board is going to be an array of integers that will keep track of who is in each square. And at the beginning of the day, all of the 9 spots on the board will be 0s. And then if the player ever goes there, we'll switch it to a 1. And if the computer goes there, we'll switch it to a 2. Now, there really are only 9 positions, so you could ask for a 9 length array. I like to just ask for 1 more. That way, for the beginning index and the final index, I can go from 1 through 9 instead of 0 through 8. But you can do whatever works best for you. Some functions to use along the way just to make things nice and simple, and then your main program can just call these functions. Initialize board is going to set all the game board values to 0 because nobody is in any of the spots at the beginning of the game. You're going to need to send the array game board to this function, and you're going to need to give it the opportunity to change that array. So we talked about that in the last lesson, how you can actually send it with the opportunity to change it. So set them all to 0 and then get back to the main program. Initialize turns is going to do a couple of things. It's going to set turns taken to 0 because this is the very beginning of the game when we're initializing. And it will also ask the question. It'll be here where we ask, do you want to go first? Okay, so we don't see that in the main program. It'll actually be embedded inside this function. And if the player says they want to go first, then we can assign the particular integer to whose turn is it to that, or we can put the computer's value in there. This particular function here, draw screen, is actually going to get called many times during the game. Every time somebody makes a move, we'll redraw the screen. So you're going to need to send it the game board so that it can see who's in each position, and then it will clear off the screen and draw a nice little grid of all the different spots. Keep it fairly simple at the beginning, and then you can make it look fancier a little bit later on. But off the start, keep it nice and simple, and that way you can kind of get the guts of your program running. Take turn player is going to be a function that will let the player go and pick their spot. You're going to need to send it three things: the game board, so we can update it; turns taken variable, so we can increment that by one. Right, as soon as this function's done near the end, you're going to need to say, okay, turns taken gets one bigger, and whose turn is it is actually going to be switched around from the player to the computer at the end of this function. That way, the next time we go to do a turn, we'll know that it's the computer's turn. And so it should ask them where they want to go, and it should check to make sure that that spot is free. And if it's not free, just keep asking them where they want to go until they give you a reasonable value. The corresponding function is the one where the computer is going to take a move. It also needs to have the game board, and it needs to have the variables turns taken, so it can make it one bigger, and whose turn is it, so that it can actually switch that back over to the player at the end of the function. This has to go and put a 0 in a reasonable open spot, and you can decide how serious you want to take this. At the beginning, I would suggest you make it just take the first open spot that it can find, or you can do random spots with that little command at the bottom there. That will pick a random number between and including 1 through 9. Or you can get really serious and see if you can find winning moves or block moves that would cause the computer to lose. That's totally up to you, but at the beginning, keep it really simple. Just pick an open spot. This function needs to have access to the game board, so it can update it. It needs to have access to turns taken and whose turn is it. Last couple of functions. Check for a winner. This function is going to actually give back a value. It's going to return a value, so it's not a void function. We'll send it the game board, and it will see if anybody has won the game. If there is a winner, then it's going to return back either a 1 or a 0, depending on who's won. And if there's no winners yet, it'll just return back a 0. And then at the end of the game, once the loop is done, then we're going to have to call up this function. This one's going to print a message indicating who won the game, or if it was a tie, that's fine too. And that's pretty much it. Try to keep your main program really simple, and I think you'll have quite a bit of success with it.